مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبارك وسلم. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ضرب الله مثلا للذين كفروا امرأة نوح وامرأة لوط كانتا تحت عبدين من عبادنا الصالحين فخانتاهما فلم يغني عنهما من الله شيئا وقيل ادخلا النار مع الداخلين. صدق الله العظيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وسلم عليه. Dear respected viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Last time we finished with the tafsir of Surah Buruj, whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned in the final few verses, هَلْ أَتَاكَ حَدِيثُ الْجُنُودِ فِرْعَوْنَ وَثَمُودَ. As they reached to you the news of the armies, Fir'aun and Thamud. بَلِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فِي تَكْذِيبٍ وَاللَّهُ مِنْ وَرَائِهِمْ مُحِيطٌ. These people, this tribe, Thamud and Fir'aun himself, they were in a great denial, a great disbelief. And بَلِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فِي تَكْذِيبٍ وَاللَّهُ مِنْ وَرَائِهِمْ مُحِيطٌ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He encompassed them from behind, He took them from behind. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dealt with these people. And inshallah, why is it that these two have been mentioned in the Qur'an al-Karim, as in Fir'aun and Thamud? Inshallah, we're going to discuss in regards to Fir'aun, what kind of a person Fir'aun was, who was Fir'aun, what was Fir'aun about. So to begin with, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Tahrim in verse 10, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions, He says here, ضرب الله مثلا للذين كفروا امرأة نوح وامرأة لوط. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, He gives an example in the case of those who disbelieved. Specifically here mentioning the wife of Nuh alayhi salam, and Lut alayhi salam. And in regards to, generally a family, if there was someone you were going to save, most definitely, and more often than not, it would be the wife of the individual. Why? Because firstly, the wife is the one who upholds the household. Secondly, of course, she is the central unit. And lastly, of course, she is the izzah of the husband, the husband's dignity. And also, what you'll realize here is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says here, كَانَتَا تَحْتَ عَبْدَيْنِ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الصَّالِحِينَ. So these two, they were both under two of our slaves. They were both under two of our slaves who were righteous. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions here that both of these women, both of them will enter Jahannam. Why? Because they they betrayed their husbands, they disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they betrayed, they were treacherous with their husbands. And of course, what you'll realize here straight away, first and foremost, is that you'll find many great men in history as well as women, but here specifically is in regards to the men, i.e. the Nuh alayhi salam and Lut alayhi salam. Then you'll find many great men. And of course here it mentions the prophets. And you realize here that, even they went through some sort of trouble in their marriage. So it goes to show that in today's day and age, specifically in 2010, with all the divorce rates that are going on and all the craziness that goes on with marriages, that no one is safe from trouble. No one is safe. That even if the prophets went through trouble with their marriages and with their wives, that of course we are going to go through trouble. But it's about how you deal with it. And of course here, what you realize is that here specifically, the wife of Lut alayhi salam and Nuh alayhi salam, they are going to be judged in accordance to what they did. And you realize that it's not that the wives of Nuh alayhi salam and Lut alayhi salam, both of them, they will come on the day of judgment alone, and they will be judged alone. So for this reason, they will enter the hellfire as they disobeyed their husbands. And of course, in Ibn Kathir here he mentions in regards to ضرب الله مثلا للذين كفروا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gives the example of those who disbelieved. In regards to the kuffar, في مخالتهم المسلمين ومعاشرتهم. So the kuffar here, they were mixing with the Muslims. They were mixing, i.e. they were living amongst them. وَمُعَاشَرَتِهِمْ. Exactly. So they were living amongst the Muslims. They were living amongst them. The kuffar at that time, they were, whichever time, the kuffar, they were living amongst the Muslims. And he mentions here, أَنَّ ذَلِكَ لَا يُجْدِي أَنْهُمْ شَيْئًا. However, they didn't benefit from them. It wasn't useful for them that they were living amongst the Muslims. And why? Of course, وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهِ وَإِنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ إِيمَانٌ حَاصِلًا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ. And of course, it was no benefit for them. They did not take any avail. Why? Because it's simply because they took no benefit. لَمْ يَكُنْ إِيمَانٌ حَاصِلًا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ, because they gained no faith in their heart. So even though they spent their company in amongst the Muslims, their suhbah was with the Muslims, they gained no benefit because they had no iman in their heart. So at the end, there was nothing that they gained from the Muslimin. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gives the example here of those who disbelieve. وَامْرَأَةَ نُوحٍ كَفَرُ امْرَأَةَ نُوحٍ وَامْرَأَةَ لُوطٍ كَانَتَا تَحْتَ عَبْدَيْنِ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الصَّالِحِينَ. And of course, he gives the example of the wife of Nuh alayhi salam and the wife of Lut alayhi salam. And in regards to them, Imam Ibn Kathir, he mentions here, أي نبيين رسولين إنهما في صحبتهما. So they were in their suhbah, the messengers, they were in, and the wives, they were in the suhbah of the Nabi, the two prophets which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent them. They lived with them. So he mentions here, Laylan wa naharan. So they were with them day and night. It wasn't the case that they were with them for a short amount of time. They were living with them day and night. وَيُآكِلَانِ وَيُدَاجِعَانِهِمَا. So they used to eat with them. They used to lie down with them. فَخَانَتَاهُمَا. But rather they betrayed them here. They betrayed them. So even though they lived with them, even though the wife of Nuh alayhi salam, the wife of Lut alayhi salam, they lived with the prophets, they slept with the prophets, they lied with the prophets, they betrayed them. فَلَمْ يُغْنِيَ عَنْهُمَا مِنَ اللَّهِ شَيْئًا. So in regards to this betrayal, fil iman la yuwafiquhuma. So they were not, they didn't accept, they didn't have iman, they were not the same as them, they weren't muwafiq with them in regards to the iman, they didn't accept them, they didn't have any iman. Wala saddaqahuma fil risala. And they didn't accept any of their message. So this was the khiyana, this was the betrayal that they did. And it will be said to them, enter the fire with those who enter. And in regards to the word فَخَانَتَاهُمَا, in regards to the treachery, there's many Shias who say here that this is in regards to them committing zina and them committing adultery, etc. But here Ibn Kathir, he makes a claim. He says فِي فَاحِشَةِ بَلْ فِي الدِّينِ. It wasn't in obscenity. They didn't betray them in regards to, they didn't commit zina. They didn't go and do adultery, but rather this was a dini matter. They didn't accept their belief. They didn't have any iman. They rejected their message. فَإِنَّ نِسَاءَ الْأَنْبِيَاء مَعْصُومَاتٍ عَنِ الْوُقُوفِ فِي الْفَاحِشَةِ. For indeed, the wives of the prophets, all of the prophets, are infallible from committing any sort of indecency. And this is of course on account of the honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in regards to the honor which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given to the Anbiya, which He had granted to the Anbiya. So in regards to this, فَخَانَتَاهُمَا, Ibn Kathir, he continues to comment on this, and he mentions that in regards to this betrayal, أَمَّا خِيَانَةُ إِمْرَأَةُ نُوحٍ فَكَانَتْ تُخْبِرُ أَنَّهُ مَجْنُونَ. So in regards to the betrayal of the wife of Nuh alayhi salam, she used to inform the people that he was a madman, that he was crazy, he was majnoon. And in regards to the وَأَمَّا خِيَانَةُ إِمْرَأَةَ لُوطٍ فَكَانَتْ تَدُلُّ قَوْمُهَا عَلَى أَدْيَافِهِ. So she used to inform the people in the city where whenever a guest would be entertained by a husband. And of course, these things will all become clear as in why they were khiyanas, but they used to betray their husbands. And he mentions here that وَكَانَتْ خِيَانَتُهُمَا أَنَّهُمَا كَانَتَا عَلَى غَيْرِ دِينِهِمَا. So this was simply because they were not following the religion that they had come with. And this is of course in regards to the khiyana of Lut, the wife of Lut alayhi salam and Nuh alayhi salam. And this is very vital for us, very important for us today. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives the example of the best of people, being Lut alayhi salam and Nuh alayhi salam. You know, if I was to ask you that, what do you think, if someone was married to a prophet, would he more likely achieve Jannah or not? Of course, everyone would say that it's more possible that a woman who was married to a prophet, it's more likely for her to attain Jannah as opposed to not. However, it just goes to show that you can spend your suhbah with whoever you want. You can spend your suhbah with your sheikh. You can spend your time with your peer, with all of the Maulanas you want. But actually what it comes down to is what you've put in yourself, what you've done yourself. It's not the case that when someone comes around, so maybe your Sheikh Sahib comes once a month in the year and then he returns back to Pakistan or India or wherever he may be, that you spend this month in his suhbah, feeding him, giving him clothes, and letting him sleep in your house and having a tasbih and wearing these good clothes. That's not enough. Unfortunately, even the wives of the Anbiya, they were not safe. Why? Because they themselves, they had to accept Islam. They themselves have to be muwafiq to what their husbands had come with. But it's similar here. The concept is the same. As in, those people who come, you spend your suhbah in your time with them, your companionship with them. It's not enough for you to simply just be with them and for the rest of the time do nothing. Even those people who were with prophets, they weren't guaranteed to attain Jannah. So for you to be with your sheikhs and your peers, whoever it may be, it's not enough for you to just sit with them, but rather you must do something yourself, do some sort of amal yourself, pray something yourself, read your namaz, actually perform your prayers. And of course, as I mentioned before, in regards to the everyone being bought on the day of judgment themselves, it's not enough for you to say that this Ramadan, oh, my husband's not fasting, or my wife's not fasting, and they've claimed some sort of disease for themselves, I'm diabetic. Well, unfortunately, he may be diabetic, but the whether it's the husband or the wife, you on the day of judgment, you can't say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Ya Allah, it was my husband, Ya Allah, it was my wife, they didn't fast. I'm sorry, but everyone will be brought on the day of judgment as a fard, as alone. You'll be brought as a single individual and you will be accountable for what you did. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now, He continues and He mentions in the next verse, وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا امْرَأَةَ فِرْعَوْنَ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives an example of the wife of Pharaoh. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives an example of the wife of Pharaoh here. So in regards to Pharaoh himself, who exactly Pharaoh was, it'll become clear in this verse, in the tafsir. كان فرعون أتى أهل الأرض وأكفرهم. So the Pharaoh, he was amongst the most tyrannical of people on this earth, and he was from amongst those who was the most disbelieving. Why? Because it's not the case that, when someone says, I'm an atheist, I don't accept a God. This individual, he used to call himself a God. He used to believe he was the Lord. So his disbelief was from the worst of disbelief. He was completely committing shirk. So at this point, فَوَاللَّهِ مَا دَرَّ إِمْرَأَتُهُ كَفَرَ زَوْجَهَا هِينَ أَطَاعَتْ رَبَّهَا. So, and what you find here is that Wallahi, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Qatada, this is the comment of Qatada, and he mentions that Wallahi, the wife of Fir'aun was not affected by the disbelief of her husband because she continued to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because she was in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, what we find that from Pharaoh wasn't someone who was a kind man. He was a very a strict man, a very harsh man, a very tyrannical man. He used to kill people. He used to rape women. He used to do all of these kind of things. And even with this, even living with this, the wife of Pharaoh, she maintained her obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just to understand, in regards to who is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so ضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا numra'ata Fir'aun. So where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives the example of the wife of Fir'aun. Who exactly was the wife of Fir'aun? The wife of Fir'aun, of course, she was the queen of one of the greatest empires, whereby great civilizations, they recognized the greatness of Egypt. Not only that, the Greeks and the Romans at that time, they built columns in the Colosseums, which were inspired by the architecture of the Egyptians. And alongside that, the kings at that time, they would send their children to go and study in Egypt. This was the greatness of Egypt. And not only that, what's more fascinating is that the Asiya, the wife of Pharaoh, she was the queen of all of these things. All of this architecture and beautiful knowledge that was available in Egypt, she was the queen of all of that. And when I'm saying that she could do what she wanted, I mean she had an open license. She had the best of houses, the best of jewelry, the best of clothing. But still, after all of this, she was not content with it. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an, is قالت رب ابني لي عندك بيتا في الجنة. Indeed, Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when she said, Ya Allah, give to me a house which is close to you in Jannah. Give to me a house which is close to you in Jannah. Even after all of these things that she had, she just wanted a house in Jannah close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is, of course, where the story begins in regards to the wife of Fir'aun. But also the final point that Ibn Kathir mentions is لِيَعْلَمُ أَنَّ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى يَحْكُمْ بِالْعَدْلِ لا يؤاخذ أحدا بذنب إلا بذنبه. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He rules via justice, and He does not punish anyone except بذنب إلا بذنبه, except by His own sins, His own actions. So it's not the case that someone else will sin and you're going to get punished for it. Of course, there is some mas'uliyah, there is some responsibility on yourselves to inform your parents, to inform your brothers, your sisters, your brothers, your friends, your family, to perform namaz, to keep fast. But at the end of the day, everyone is responsible for themselves, and they will only be punished in regards to what they did for themselves, by their own sins. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, here the narration, a long narration is mentioned in regards to what took place with Asiya. And the story starts where one day she was stood at the Nile with her maids, and she sees a small crate, and it's passing through the river at this point. And as this crate's passing, the maids, they're shocked. They think it's some sort of treasure coming in, and the way it's so untouched, and there's no damage upon this crate. So they pick the crate up from the river, and Asiya, the wife of Pharaoh, she looks in and she finds Musa alayhi salam inside. And such is the precision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the mother of Musa to leave her child within the river Nile, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala planned that Asiya alayhi salam was stood there at that time with her maids to collect Musa alayhi salam. Such is the precision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course she opened it and she fell in love with this baby, with Musa alayhi salam. And it's also reported that Asiya, she wasn't able to have children. For this reason, of course, Asiya alayhi salam, she grew even fonder of Musa alayhi salam. So she took him to Pharaoh, and she said to Pharaoh that, look, there's this baby and I really want to take care of him. So Pharaoh, he was just, yeah, that's fine, go on then, you can look after him. So Pharaoh, he allows Asiya to look after this baby, and Asiya, she begins to bring him up, Musa alayhi salam. And it comes to a point when Musa alayhi salam, he grows of age, and then he begins making the call towards Islam. And immediately Asiya radiallahu ta'ala anha, she accepts Islam. And at this point, she made it clear, she hadn't made it clear to Pharaoh that she was worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because as I mentioned before, Pharaoh himself took himself to be God. So she kept it in secret, and she was worshipping alone. And the incident of Asiya later actually comes about, that she accepted Islam from this particular event, whereby a very famous narration here mentioned in the books of Tafsir, and where here the hairdresser of the daughter of Pharaoh, however, one day she was combing the hair of the daughter of Pharaoh, and it mentions in the Tafsir, فَوَقَعَ الْمِسْطَ مِنْ يَدِهَا فَقَالَتْ. So the comb from the hand of the maid had dropped upon the floor, and she said the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in other narrations, it mentions that she said that may the one who disbelieves in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be cursed. And then the daughter of Pharaoh said to her, فَقَالَتْ لَهَا بِنْتِ فِرْعَوْنَ وَلَكَ رَبِّي غَيْرِ أَبِي. So is there for you a Lord other than my father? Of course, as I mentioned, the Lord at this time was Pharaoh. And she mentioned here, فَقَالَتْ رَبِّي وَرَبُّكَ رَبِّي وَرَبُّ أَبِيكَ وَرَبُّ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. Allah. So she mentioned, my Lord and the Lord of your father and the Lord of everything is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, it mentions here, فَضَرَبَهَا بِنْتِ فِرْعَوْنَ. So the bint of Pharaoh, ضربتها, struck her. She hit the maid, وَأَخْبَرَتْ أَبَاهَا, and she informed her father, i.e. Pharaoh, as to what took place. فَأَرْسَلَ فِرْعَوْنَ إِلَيْهَا فَقَالَ. So Pharaoh, he called towards her, and he said to her, do you worship a Lord other than me? To which she replied, Na'am, Rabbi wa Rabbuka Rabbu kulli shay, Rabbu kulli shay, Allah. So of course my Lord and your Lord is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is the Lord of everything. And he began to torture her. He began to torture her, so much so that at the end of that day, he said to her, Ma anti muntahiyya, are you finished now? Are you done now with your ridiculous claim of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And the next day, Pharaoh once again he called upon her, and this time he called upon her with her children. So this was the maid of the daughter of Pharaoh, and he called upon her, and he mentioned again to her, he goes, look, who is it that you worship? And she again, same answer. So he ordered a pot of oil, a bowl of oil be bought and set ablaze to be boiled. And of course the army of Pharaoh, they began to prepare it, and then he asked her once again, and he said, look, who's your Lord? And very simply she replied, look, my Lord is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he took one of the children of the hairdresser, the maid of the daughter of Pharaoh, and he threw her son into this oil, and he killed him. And it's at this point, Ibn Kathir, he mentions that وَإِنَّ رُوحَ ابْنَهَا, the ruh, the soul of her son, it began to rejoice. فَقَالَ لَهَا, and how this took place, of course it's not mentioned, but فَقَالَ لَهَا, so the soul of the boy who had just been thrown in, her son who had just been thrown in, it was said to her, أَبَشَرِي يَا أُمُّ. So it was said to her, rejoice, O mother, فَإِنَّ لَكَ إِنَّ اللَّهِ مِنْ ثَوَابٍ كَذَا وَكَذَا. So indeed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there is such and such reward for you. And فَصَبَرَتْ ثُمَّ أَتَى عَلَيْهَا فِرْعَوْنَ يَوْمٌ آخَرَ. So she remained patient, and of course she had 5 children, so one had been killed at this time, and she maintained her patience. And the next day again Pharaoh called for her, and he repeated this, and he continued to repeat this, whereby he called her again, and he said to her, look, who do you worship? And again she gave the same answer, that I worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again he took one of her sons, and he threw the son into the burning oil and killed him. And again the ruh of the son, it came, and he said to her, O mother, rejoice, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you such and such reward. And this took place until the last child of the maid was left, and she came and she entered the room, and Pharaoh once again he asked her that who exactly is it that you worship? And she was this is a similar narration as to what took place before in the Ashab al-Ukhdud, when the woman came, and it mentions fataqasa'at, she was refraining, she didn't want to go in, she was more worried about her small child. And at this point Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted the second miracle, another miracle, whereby the child spoke, and it said, Isbiri ya ummi innaki ala al-haq, indeed you are upon the truth. And at this point the maid, she entered the oil alongside with her son, and Pharaoh killed her also. But this was the moment where Asiya had seen, and she realized that, look, if she could have so much yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so much faith, then what am I doing? Of course I'm going to go to Pharaoh right now. So she goes up to Pharaoh, and she tells Pharaoh, listen, I don't believe in you. I don't believe in you whatsoever. I only believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are not the Lord, you are a bashar, you are a human. And at this point, Pharaoh turns around and he says, do you know what I'm going to do with you? Do you know what I'm going to do to you? And he begins to torture her. He begins to beat her. He begins to absolutely, rip her apart limb from limb, beat her, chain her. The narrations in regards to the way he beat her, he would hang her from the ceiling. He would whip her. So much so that eventually he took her, he removed all of her clothing, and he let her lay in the desert, in the sun, in the scorching heat, and he used to whip her every day with a chain. And all at this point, the only thing that the Asiya was saying, the wife of Pharaoh, the only thing she was saying was, Rabbi ibni li indaka baytan fil Jannah. Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, grant me a house which is close to you in Jannah. This is the only thing she was saying. And it's mentioned here, فَإِذَا إِنْصَرَفَ عَنْهَا أَزَلَّتْهَا الْمَلَائِكَةِ بِأَجْنِحَتِهَا. So whilst Pharaoh was torturing her in the sun, when they would move away from her, when they would have a break, when they would stop torturing her, the angels, they would shade her with their wings from the sun. They wouldn't allow her to burn in the sun. Allahu Akbar. And of course, it mentions here that in regards to this verse, رَبِّ ابْنِ لِي إِنَّكَ بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ فَضَحِكَتْ هِينَ رَأَتْ بَيْتَهَا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. Allahu Akbar. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, He showed her, as she was being tortured, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He showed her her house in Jannah. And when she seen this, she began to laugh. She began to laugh. فَقَالَ فِرْعَوْنَ, and Fir'aun, he said, أَلَا تَعْجِبُونَ مِنْ جُنُونِهَا. I'm become amazed. We are all, I'm so confused about her madness. He was so, confused about her madness. Inna na'adhibuha wa hiya tadhak. So we're punishing her, we're giving her so much difficulty, yet she laughs. Look how crazy she is. And of course, he doesn't know that Asiya, his wife, has just seen a house in Jannah, and there was nothing else that she wanted. And then he mentions, فَقَبِضَ اللَّهُ رُوحَهَا. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He took her ruh fil jannati, to Jannah. Radiyallahu ta'ala anha. And this was the end of Asiya, as in regards to with her relation with Fir'aun, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He took her soul and He admitted her to Jannah. And of course, this goes to show you that, of course, it was tough for Asiya. None of us could ever endure what Asiya did. Of course, at this moment, guaranteed, any of us who were going through the same pain that Asiya went through, no doubt we would have left. No doubt, and it's even bad to say, no doubt we may have even left this religion. But the strong conviction, the strong belief of Asiya, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us like her, make our belief like her, make our iman like her. And at this point, of course, Asha, she remained firm, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He granted her a house in Jannah. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us also a house in Jannah. And why this is relevant to us today, of course, why I mention this is firstly to show you the true haqiqat of Fir'aun, what he was like as a person. He wasn't just someone who, would, he's not your typical guy today, is he? He's out torturing people, he's raping women, he's doing what he wants. And if you were to define what they call gangster today, the gangster, no one was a gangster like Pharaoh was. Pharaoh was the top don. I'm talking in terms of raw brutality, in terms of raw disbelief. There is no one today who exists who was like Pharaoh. Yet the wife of Pharaoh was able to maintain her belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and her obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the message for us today, of course, is that you could be with the best of people, you can be with amongst the best of shuyukh, the best of peer, the best of teachers, but you must do something yourself. Islam is a self-struggle. And not only that, you can be with the worst of people. You can be on the streets of Audley, the streets of Bradford, the streets of Blackburn, wherever you may be. And you can be with the worst of people. You can be hanging around with the biggest of gangsters. But it's not to say that you can't attain Jannat also. Similarly, how Asiya radiyallahu ta'ala anha, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with that, how she refrained from accepting anything that, any obscenity, any sort of kufr from Fir'aun, any belief in Fir'aun, how she refrained and she continued her ta'ah in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, we can do this. Of course, we don't need to be worried. It's not the end of the world. There's no bigger gangster today that's alive than Fir'aun. Of course not. So if Asiya alayhi salam was able to do this, refrain and attain Jannah, then what's to say that we can't follow in his footsteps? No matter how bad you think life's going for you, or no matter who you're chilling with these days, there's always a way for you to get out of it. And of course, maintain your obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, if there is a month of reforming, this is the month of Ramadan. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us to take a benefit. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also, if I've made any mistakes, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me. And also I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows those people who are in the suhbat of those who are good to benefit themselves and to continue doing amal, not only at that moment when they are with them people, but to continue throughout the years to come, as well as those people who are in the suhbah of the evil people and the gangsters of today. I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take them out of that group, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them and grant them the understanding of the deen. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينَ. السلام عليكم.
صلي وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. مولاي صلي وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.